Jordan, ready? It is 5:30, so I will call the Mandan Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for August 24th to order. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Huber.
Here.
Veda Hammond.
Here.
Commissioner Horn. Commissioner Mutter.
Here.
Mayor Freilich.
Here.
Commissioner Lang.
Here.
Commissioner Renner.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner McLean.
Here.
Commissioner Intveld.
Here.
Chair Robinson.
Here. And I would like to make an announcement on the roll call. I did receive and reluctantly agreed to a resignation today from Commissioner Gardner. So next item would be consider approval of minutes from our July 27th meeting. Questions?
I can move to approve, Chair Robinson.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner McLean, second by Commissioner Hammond to approve the minutes of July 27. Any questions? None. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Mutter.
Yes.
Mayor Freilich.
Yes.
Commissioner Lang.
Yes.
Commissioner Renner.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner McLean.
Yes.
Commissioner Intveld.
Yes.
Commissioner Huber.
Yes.
Commissioner Veda Hammond.
Yes.
Chair Robinson.
Yes. We do have quorum. And next item, I'm going to, before we go into staff presentation, I'm going to kind of go over how the evening will flow. We have a lot of people here and certainly don't get this kind of attendance at a normal meeting. So I'd like to go over how expectations are going to go for the meeting. City staff will present the ordinance to the commission and the community tonight. P&Z commissioners will then submit questions to the staff and recommendations to the staff prior to opening it up for public comment. Just so for the record, submitted comments to the city inbox that has been out there, I'm not sure for how long, month and a half, have been received by the commissioners in their package. I don't know the count. We did receive, I think, about 4 or 5 more today. Prior to the meeting. Side note, they were largely constructive. They were both respectful of staff and commission, and some of the emails did provide much appreciated detail. After we get through, the commission has its questions for city staff. At that point, we'll open up for public comment. Public comment will have a 3-minute time limit. I will want you to state your name for the record. The microphone is over on the lowest level, the highest point of the lowest level right over there. And there's also a sign-up sheet next to that. So if you are speaking, in addition to stating your name for the record, sign in on the sign-up sheet. Comment period is not a Q&A event. Questions may be posed, and city staff will address them after closing the open period. We do need to keep the process moving tonight. I do reserve the right to shorten the 3 minutes if the speaker is way off topic, or if we somehow go through accusations, insults, that kind of thing. I will interrupt you and ask you to just return to your seat. In other words, if somebody tells me the Minnesota Vikings would have 3 Super Bowl championships, if it wasn't for these data centers, I'll have to stop you. We'll have no repeat commenters. We'll do it, the open segment will be open for 1 hour. The expected behavior will be courtesy, obviously, for everyone attending and commenting, and commissioners and city staff. No shouting comments from the audience. Be mindful of the commenters. The comment box was open for about 6-7 weeks. Like I stated, there was a lot of good comments in there, and you got to be mindful that we'll be trying to add to this ordinance tonight with their comments. Public comments are expected to be directed to the draft ordinance, and comments will be received just on the main floor at that location. Once we get through that process, roughly an hour, we'll close the public comment, and then we'll return the draft back to the commission for further discussion with city staff and among the commission. And once we get to that point, this board does make the motion is basically a recommendation motion. So our recommendation is to the city commission. So obviously there's another step before this ordinance does get codified in the main ordinance. So with that, I will turn it over to Jarek and Jordan. I believe Jarek's going to start with presentation.
Thank you very much. All right. Can everybody hear me just fine? All right. We have a quick presentation up front. This will go over a lot of the process that we used to create the ordinance. Started July 6th-ish, and then we posted it on August 6th, so it was about a month of work. I did attend the public meeting at the Veterans Library over in Bismarck, and we also did attend the meeting here on August 6th. We reviewed a lot of comments, and we feel pretty good about the process. All right, why are we talking about this now? We have been working on a land use code for the last 3 years, since 2023. In that land use code, we did have 4 lines designated for data center regulations. With the rumors kind of going about and the North Dakota Planning Association releasing their model ordinance, we did replace that with about 4 pages of ordinance based on that model ordinance. And then after that, we replaced it with 19 pages of very thought-out intentional ordinance that was based specifically on the feedback they were hearing from the community. And the reason that we have special ordinances for data centers is because they can be developed at such a massive scale that the regular land use code is insufficient to regulate them. So that's why we're here tonight. A lot of questions that we've been hearing. Cost to residents, can the power grid handle it? What about our water? What happens to the land and buildings after a data center? What does it look like? What could a data center look like? And then what will neighbors hear and feel? Cost to the residents. Large facilities can increase demand for power and strain infrastructure, leading to higher utility rates and added cost for residents. Our approach to this was to protect residential users. We don't have authority to dictate electrical utility rates. That would be the Public Service Commission and or MDU and or whatever power supplier there is. But as part of our ordinance, we are requiring utility providers to verify capacity and then disclose how an applicant's project would affect utility rate structures, or how they would fit in the utility rate structure relative to residential users. So while this ordinance is very general, when a specific project comes along, they would have to disclose that to us and therefore disclose it to the public for public review. And then we also have fund 110% of the estimated upgraded or new utility and transportation infrastructure up front. So that is how we address that. Can our power grid handle it? Once again, this is something that we have limited control over, being part of the city, but we are requiring declarations and statements made from utility providers and the applicant to verify available power generation, transmission, distribution capacity, and then requiring them to fund the upgrades before operations begin. So if they're requiring expansion of electrical or gas facilities, they are going to be paying for those upgrades. And then once again, statements verifying that there's no adverse impact on existing customers. How will our infrastructure keep up with it? This is something that we have a little bit more control over. We are allowed to regulate it because we control it. We are requiring low water demand closed loop systems or non-potable evaporative cooling methods. The non-potable evaporative cooling method would be a stretch where some applicant might be close to our wastewater treatment facility and maybe they could use wastewater reuse in a situation like that. They would not be allowed to dig wells and they would not be allowed to inject their wastewater. They would have to likely haul it to an off-site facility rather than dispose towards us. We can't really answer specifics around what wastewater or water requirements would be without an application in hand, because that's where we would learn a lot of the specifics about a project. What happens to the land and buildings long term? We are requiring a decommissioning plan with decommissioning bonds for 125% of the estimated decommissioning cost, updated every 5 years. So they would have to provide that upfront, naming the city as the recipient. And then we also have a lot of language in there that is geared towards promoting reuse of these facilities. Our thought process was that decommissioning costs and therefore bonding requirements would go down with reuse declarations and reuse plans. So that would be mutually beneficial. I don't think, even if it was returned to the natural state of the land, I think everybody would still see that as wasteful to put up $1 billion facilities only to tear it down a few years down the road with the decommissioning bonds. Trying not to be wasteful, but still trying to be protective. We do have minimum floor area ratios built in here. What we don't want for these sites also is to become massive roadblocks in our community. We already have a lot of massive roadblocks in our community with the railroad, the interstate, the Heart River, the Missouri River, and topography. So we don't want this to just be another roadblock for us to get transportation or utility infrastructure from one point in our community to another. So what will it look like? In our existing ordinance, we have something called the Gateway Overlay District. This Gateway Overlay District has a lot of aesthetic requirements and a lot of screening requirements associated with it as well already. We use that as kind of a model to piggyback on top of. We don't want massive concrete buildings that are eyesores to be impacting neighboring properties. So we have at least 50% of each facade includes architectural treatments. That is up from 20%, 30% in our gateway district. Height limits are applicable to zoning district. Lighting standards, that's something that people have talked about quite a bit. We use the dark skies model ordinance that would prevent light trespass onto neighboring properties and would require downlighting and would specifically restrict uplighting. Used a lot of tools that are already in our toolbox to manage appearances. What will neighbors hear and feel? This is probably where we spent the most time and the most technical research. Enforceable noise limits. We have specific A-weighted and C-weighted noise limits for residential properties, commercial properties, and industrial properties. We also have limits that are related to what the ambient baseline was prior to development. So they will also be restricted if they're in a particularly quiet zone. They wouldn't be able to go all the way up to what their limits are. They could only go up by a certain amount. We have vibration limits, once again, split by the sensitivity of a property. Somebody sleeping in their home at night is more sensitive to vibrations than somebody working at Cloverdale, for example. So we have really intentional limits associated with noise and vibration. Monitoring, we have a language in here that would require continued monitoring, that would ensure compliance, and would be at the beginning of startup of operations. No facility would be able to operate until they had field verified noise and vibration thresholds met. And then we also have community engagement. Any applicant would need to engage with neighbors within a half mile as part of the special use permit, but there would also be notification requirements that are inherent to conditional use permits, zone changes, future land use updates. We have a lot of other mechanisms in place that would require public notification. How do we know it actually works? I got ahead of myself here. For facilities to begin operations, they would need to verify what their stated model performance was. And they would have to meet infrasound requirements, they would have to meet C-weighted requirements, light requirements, vibration requirements, A-weighted requirements. And then for facilities that are constructed in stages, we have it split for those requirements and verifications to happen at 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100% of the master build-out's electrical capacity. So for 1,000 megawatt facility, they would have to do an acoustic verification at the very beginning just to get compliance, but then they'd have to do another one at 250 megawatt capacity, 500 megawatt capacity. So we have it tiered like that. And those would be really good stages to have interventions. What happens if standards aren't met? We would identify issues likely through our own observations, random testing, or through public input. If they were found to be outside of compliance, we have immediate throttling required. And then the throttling would be to bring them back into compliance. And while they are throttled, they would be making corrective actions to come back into compliance. And then they would be allowed to go back up if they could, and to verify that the corrective actions were effective. If there were continued violations, the special use permit would be suspended and they would no longer be able to operate at that point in time. I know that we have been talking about fine structures. Fine structures are really hard for us in this particular situation because of the scale that these corporations operate at. We have no idea if $1 million a day would be anything, you know? We don't have, it's hard to do that. So we felt like the most effective punishment or the most effective consequences would be ceasing operations, and then that would naturally scale with how big the facility is. It'd be lost revenue. So we felt like that was a pretty good way to do that. Who pays for the impacts? Did mention up front that they'd be required to pay for the infrastructure that they need to build the facility. We are also requiring them to analyze and make improvements to the roads required for construction, and we are requiring the testing, all of the testing that it's associated with the special use permit to be paid for by developers, but administrated by the city through independent third-party consultants. And then site reclamation, they would also need to be putting up money up front to handle site reclamation through a bond. The goal here is to insulate Mandan residents from any of the costs associated with this and to mitigate as much impact as possible. Preparing today for tomorrow. Yeah, we are trying to encourage infrastructure that is appropriate for long-term performance. We are trying to make sure that the financial assurances are made ahead of time and not after the fact. and we are trying to make sure that everything is restored responsibly in the case that this all fails. So. And then as far as public engagement during a special use permit process, half-a-mile notice is kind of the radius that we had landed on for the ordinance. There would be public hearings associated with our regular Planning and Zoning Commission process. The applicants are required to have public liaisons, human public liaisons, and they would be required to have 48-hour responses to inquiries from the public. So, right now, what happens next? This is a draft. This ordinance, it does not approve a data center. This is not about a specific data center. It's not even about a specific location. It is about a process through which we regulate data center development anywhere inside city limits or the ETA. And then tonight is an opportunity to consider whether these proposed standards adequately address Mandarin's needs and concerns, Mandan's needs and concerns. Public input process tonight. We want to get public input. We've got a lot of public input. As staff internally, we have suggested additions and changes that we think would be good changes as a result of the public input that we've received so far. But we're kind of open ears tonight, and we want to hear everybody's concerns that have read the draft and want to influence it. So I'll turn it over to Jordan here. I think he was going to go over the ordinance, unless anybody on the commission wants to comment on kind of the process on how we got here.
Questions for Jarek?
Chair Robinson, Jarek, how did you come up with the half mile?
The half mile was in the planning association's model code. That was originally a setback. What we felt, what we translated that to, we got a lot of comments that were like, well, a half mile is too short, it should be 1 mile. Bismarck's is 1,000 feet. A lot of people said, well, it shouldn't be a half mile, it should be 10 miles. Then the city of Mandan is 9 miles wide. So we landed on, we kind of stuck with that half mile, but then what we shifted to was, rather than be entirely reliant on noise to dissipate over a distance, we want them to prove that noise will dissipate over a half mile. And if it dissipates over a half mile, everything a mile out should be protected. Everything 10 miles out should be protected. So we shifted from a distance-based performance standard to a results-based performance standard.
What happens if the half mile does not work? Do you think of increasing it a little bit more?
I think that we could look at expanding what we consider to be the sensitive area that needs to be considered. And the modeling up front, I don't think that would be an issue. I think that it's all fairly dynamic, modeling-wise. But we do feel that the most sensitive properties would end up being closer rather than further away from whatever proposed development there would be. But certainly we could look at expanding that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions at this time?
All right. I'm going to go through the ordinance, the first half. Jarek's going to take more of the technical sound stuff on the back end, but we're just going to kind of run through it. And then if you guys have other questions and things that you want to ask after we're done. We're not reading this line by line, but just gives a good description. I know Jarek had a great presentation on this, but just starts at the beginning from the authority general framework of this ordinance. And we have definitions, obviously the different sized ones, pure tone, different engagement processes for that. Applicability, C, data centers are classified within industrial group B and permitted in the MB and MX zoning districts with an approved conditional use permit You guys know this, but I just want to back up a second and show the process by which the city goes to this. So as staff, our hope is to, at some point, have an ordinance that we work with. And once we have that, after that is through this process, through the city commission and their process, we would have an ordinance of some sort adopted. At that stage, that is the starting point for anybody that would want to come forward with a data center. So up on the screen, we've got our land use application process, which includes the conditional special use process. So within that process is the fact that, okay, we have this ordinance in place. Now we can come through the special use permit process, which includes coming to this board with a application, and that would fall in line with everything that's in front of you tonight. And then after that, well, what conditions do we have on it? What pieces are we going to put on that application? And after that, then it would go through P&Z, and then we have the flow chart of yes, no, what their decision is, end up at City Commission for their either approval or denial. So this is not the last hearing for anything that will happen data center related. This is just the start. And for us, it's this first, and then we would move on to the special use permit process, which includes another hearing from this board, a full application received to the city from an applicant, whoever that might be, and then working with us as staff, all of the inner workings, making sure that we're following everything that we would have in an ordinance. So they're classified in that, and currently we have no agricultural zoning within that. So there would also be a zone change, which would again require this board's approval process and continue on that stage. So just to bring that forward, I know we've had a little bit of confusion on that, but we have no application for you. We have nothing. So ordinance is what we're focused on and honing in on. The entitlement process review, public review, number 2, the conditional use permit is required in order for any of this. If construction, number 1, hasn't commenced within 3 years, the permit, then that shall automatically terminate. They'd have to bring it back and go through that process again. Permit modifications, B, anything that gets changed within any of the site specifics that we would consider a major change would have to come back and do this entire process all again. So an increase in the total number of accessory structures on a development parcel, or the expansion, structural modification, or addition that increases a building more than 5% of its originally permitted footprint. Any modification, alteration, expansion of the boundary lines, all of these things, and then the layout to structures, utility providers, any building change of any kind, or the site in general is going to have to come back through the special use permit process. So the other one, C, permit transfers. Prior to any change in ownership of any data center, that will also have to come back through. An application should be made to the board requesting transfer of the conditional use permit process. Approval of that shall be conditioned upon explicit written agreement by the new permittee and be attached to the original permit with approval. So there again, change ownership, we need approval again, or we go back through this process. Public notice, Jarek talked about that. We need someone within that time window that can be a liaison for the project. General development requirements and submittal requirements. A lot of the things in this proposed project identification, a lot of these things for staff are kind of our normal things. There were things added, the cooling methods, emissions, description of the wastewater, waste disposal, water, all of those things will have to be submitted. Site plan details, through the whole thing there again, just looking at all of those. And I want to point out too that within the site plan details and the site-specific things that we look at, there are a lot of things that are referenced, and one of them, and I think Jarek's got it pulled up, but one of them is number 12, stormwater management components. Well, That's not just one piece. That entire process is already up and running at the city. That is a 16-page document that is a checklist that needs to be followed. So it's not just, okay, we looked at the stormwater, we're good. No, we have this process in place, and you're going to have to follow the City of Mandan stormwater process within that. So there's a lot of referencing of things that may be outside of this specific ordinance that you say, well, where is that? We have it. And there are other processes as well that include state, federal things that may have their own process. We'll get to those in a second, but just to give you a heads up, we have other processes. Stormwater is one of them. There's a lot of other things that we look at. You may say, well, this is missing on the list. It may not be. It may be somewhere else, and not that we're specifically hiding it, but Jarek and their team in the engineering department have worked really hard to get that stormwater management process up and ready to go. Not just for this, but in this whole zoning process, there's a lot of things that we've been moving and trying to update in order to get this where it needs to go. So it may look like we're doing it for data centers, but really it's been a 3-year process for us as staff trying to get everything updated and ready to go. The next one, stormwater emergency plans. Hoping I'm not, no, sorry, I went too far, Jarek. Receptor mapping, obviously we want a map of all of these things if there would be one. The city and staff would like all the spatial data, everything, topography, building, equipment, footprints, buffer zones, all of the data that they get, we want. We want to be able to use it in either by third party or ourselves look at all of the data and be able to use that with our systems that we use, our GIS Pro, CAD, Civil 3D, and things like that. There's the environmental assessment. Prior to scheduling of the hearing, we need to have the studies, biological study, comprehensive pre-construction inventory, archaeological study. The big one on this is the additional pieces, which is the submitting of other agencies necessary for project compliance with all applicable state and federal laws, statutes, rules, regulatory standards, and anticipated schedule for that. That's part of that process. That in our world, that includes FEMA, that includes all of the necessary things that we need to look at in that. Utility verifications, Jarek went over that, description of that, and how that happens. And then the stormwater emergency plans, we have, I think, a really good stormwater setup that goes through all of that. And then I'm going to back up. Which section did I have that in? In the entitlement process, I skipped over it, but permit modifications. Number 4, any alterations to the structures, layout, utility providers, engineering methods utilized for energy procurement, electrical supply, water supply. I did talk about that, sorry. And then we have site plan. Did I get through everything that I wanted? And stormwater. I don't think there is, but that's the first half of it. I'm letting Jarek take over all of the technical side of things.
Yeah, we'll see where this all goes. I guess pausing right there, is there anything that Chair Robinson or commissioners that you'd like us to expand on or go over again?
Questions at this time?
Jared, I got a real quick question. I noticed we separated the data centers for sizes and stuff like that, and I pulled the information out here a little while ago that Minneapolis, the old Minneapolis Tribune in downtown Minneapolis, is going to become a data center. Do we have any ordinance about stuff like that, or are we going to just leave that half mile in there for situations like that if it's a micro data center?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter, we do have specific exceptions for very, very small scale data centers, quote unquote data centers, and those are handled through specific allowances for these micro and minor data centers, which would be at a scale that would be much less impactful. Yeah.
And then the second question, because of these big data centers, and I know how much construction and stuff like that, do we have rules and regulations for them so they don't get carried away about, and I'm thinking of dust and stuff like that. Is there any, we have any rules or regulations that we're going to take care of that type of stuff? Thank you.
Commissioner Rutter, yes, we would have rules specifically related to nuisance noises, nuisance lighting, road damage. Dust control is something that is very common on other construction projects where we require them to use watering trucks to keep dust down or add some sort of dust palliative to keep dust down. We also have our stormwater ordinance handles a lot of the like mud track out control, and we do have it is something that we should look at, just because our stormwater ordinance fine structure is something that once again might prove to be ineffective for something at this scale. But in general, we can handle construction activities with our current ordinance at a fairly large scale.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Chair Robinson. Jared, my question is just a little bit about the setbacks. I know that around the country kind of setbacks they're setting with linear feet, whether it's 500 or 1,000. Have you guys had discussions about changing that? And that kind of goes hand in hand with your decimal levels at the setback range, which if your setbacks are at 500, whatever, I know that the Morton County looks at it, they're looking at about a 45 decimal level at the setback or at the property line. Is that something you guys are looking to maybe match that? I know right now we're at the daytime levels of 55 in this zone ordinance.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner. I mean, absolutely. We've been discussing it, and then like a setback distance, a minimum setback distance on top of performance requirements, I think I would view as some sort of safety net, and I think that would be a good addition, acknowledging that like the setback requirements in Stutzman County and Morton County and other rural municipalities or political subdivisions might not be appropriate for an urban environment, and we would likely be measuring it in feet rather than miles, or in my opinion. And then as far as what an appropriate decibel level is, we did, included in our user-friendly version of the report, we did include a lot of references at the back end of this, and the protective noise levels document here is kind of where we had landed on what is acceptable for residential noise limits. A lot of this is around A-weighted noise, and we all know that data center noise can generally trend to the lower side of things. So we do also have C-weighted noise limits that are in line with, I would say, what the professional community uses as like a relation between DBA and DBC noise limits. But as far as going to 45 or going to 50 instead of 55 and 50, that might be something that we could absolutely look at. We're not closing our eyes if that's the actual right number. Yeah.
And then just one follow-up. I just want to thank you guys. I know that you guys did a tremendous amount of work, and it's a lot of research and hard work. So thank you for all your work you did put into this.
Appreciate it.
Jared, Jordan, I got one question. I know we've had a lot of discussion around landscaping in the past, around variances and such. How do you see the landscaping plans fitting in for data centers into our current plan, or would that be something totally different for data centers?
Jordan, you want to take that?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Infeld, I think we have the types now with our new ordinance. I think they'll follow great. One of the added benefits of adding that extra layer of the gateway on top of that, which would be the gateway overlay, that's normally reserved for your downtown corridor or your major arterial roads that we have within the city. So adding that as an extra, I think, would benefit quite a bit. And a lot of times on a landscape plan, there's things that we're looking at specifically, like if you were planning to put all ground shrubs in rocks along something like this, we we would definitely say no. That's not what we're looking for in this type of a plan. So,
Chair Robinson, if I might follow up to that question, it does specifically state a type C buffer as described in Article 13 landscaping, and I was wondering if you could just describe or read for us what a type C buffer is, just to give a little bit more expectation on that.
Yes, you read my mind. I was just trying to pull it up. I know that the commissioners can't see it here, but I did look in our zoning code update document, a type C buffer. It's called an opaque buffer, and it's designed for lots in higher intensity districts bordering lower intensity districts, providing substantial visual and sound barrier. It is highlighted by a 20-foot wide vegetated buffer with 80% opacity. So it is something that is, once, as Jordan mentioned, defined elsewhere. I do have it pulled up on screen. I don't have it memorized, but it is the most restrictive buffer that we have in our ordinance.
Thank you.
And then I would also like to say, on top of that, landscaping. I would imagine that a developer's landscaping would be multi-purpose. I think that they would be using a lot of landscaping for sound buffering to meet our performance requirements. So I imagine that they would have to go above what we require.
One more question, if I might, Chair Robinson. So absent an ordinance like this, if an application would have come forward to the city of Mandan in the last year or so, let's say, what would have guided that? Would it have been industrial zoning, the highest level of industrial zoning, and how might that compare or contrast to the 20-page document that we have before us?
Yes, Jordan might be better equipped to answer this, but I would say that we would have not had. I think that we would have been not standing on solid ground as far as regulating goes, because I don't know if we would have that defined properly as a use group. I don't know if we'd be able to fit something in nicely, and there would be a lot of legal ambiguity trying to regulate it, and then even then, our most restrictive industrial regulation still wouldn't have captured some of the nuisances that are associated with large-scale data center development. So we would have been in a bad spot, I would say.
And just to add to that too, within the 3-year process of us updating the zoning code, we had a few lines, but up until recently, there wasn't a lot in there for that. So credit to League of Cities and other jurisdictions and groups and public for engaging in this and kind of giving us a gauge of what we need to be looking at and for. So taking all of that in and bringing just the draft copy of what we have now. But I probably would have set it on the planner's desk, which we don't currently have a planner at the office, so it would have sat there, the application. So.
Well, thank you, and I echo the appreciation for the hard work on this.
And I can comment on the ordinance as a whole. I don't know how many years I've been on this commission, but it's close to 30. And keep in mind the ordinance that were updated, it was when single-family homes had single-stall garages and among other very dated items in there. So this whole process has been needed.
Chair Robinson, should I continue going through?
Yes.
Okay.
Continue.
Yeah, Jordan went over that front end. Acoustic impact report. This is honestly where we started and where I think that we have spent the most time. Not to go over, we have 15 sub-items in this in the requirements for an acoustic impact report. But generally, it would require a developer to establish a baseline ambient noise at identified sensitive receiving locations within a half mile of a proposed development. So that, and then they would use their design data to model their projected noise impact to that ambient baseline, and they would have to show compliance for I'll go to the performance table because it's in a separate section. They would have to show compliance that it changes for residential districts, commercial and mixed-use districts, and industrial districts based on A-weighted and C-weighted requirements. They have to meet both. So it's not an either or, it's both. And then we have daytime limits that are 5 decibels higher than nighttime limits. After they model, included in their modeling, so this is something that got brought up by the community quite a bit, they would have to show us the spectrum of the noise that they're producing, and we have definitions for tonal noise, and they would receive automatic penalties to their modeled scores if tonal noise is modeled, and then on the back end if tonal noise is detected as far as acoustic verification. We also have limits for residential receiving properties, even if they meet that 5550 A-weighted decibel performance. If that residential property was at 40 to begin with, they cannot go beyond 45. They can't increase it by more than 5 decibels for A-weighted or C-weighted performances. We have that set up for residential properties, and we have plus 10 or plus 10 dBA, dBc for commercial and industrial receiving properties. And then we do have a specific allowance for particularly quiet performing zones. If it's in an extremely quiet zone, and it's predicted to be still extremely quiet, the developer wouldn't need to adhere to what would be unrealistic increased standards at that point in time. Let's see here. We tried to close every loop, every gap, everything that might be pushed against. If an ambient noise is already in excess of our strict limits, they would be allowed to go 3 above, 3 decibels above what is already out of compliance. So, I guess in a nutshell, that's what we're requiring as in front of an application. They would need to provide proof of performance as part of the application process itself, although it would all be predictive at that point in time. But it's the best we can do at that stage. We can keep going on here. Pre-commencement agreements. There are items that we see belong in a development agreement. This would be where we make definitions for infrastructure, improvements, expansions, or rehab that would be required as part of a proposed development. And we do have funding at least 110%, upfront funding of at least 110% of the estimated engineering and construction costs. We want to have that money in hand, just in case. Capital contribution allocated directly to municipal departments for emergency response equipment or monitoring equipment. And then here's a big one. This is, we did get this from Morton County's ordinance. The City Commission may, at its discretion in reviewing the nature, scope, and specific details of the proposal, require the applicant to enter into additional agreements for the purpose of organizing the location and type of either temporary or permanent housing that will be developed to support construction and operation of the project, and to develop, in consultation with the applicant, approaches to mitigate the effects of data center facility on infrastructure and or the community at large. This would be the community benefit agreement that we hear at meetings all the time. There are items that we wanted to have specifically outlined in the ordinance as part of a development agreement, which we feel are are so inherent to the construction of these properties that they can be part of an ordinance. They can be legally tied to an ordinance. Anything beyond that, community benefit agreements, we feel are more appropriate to handle on a case-by-case basis. We would love to tie it to this, but we want to make sure that we are on good legal footing in those situations. So this one's doing a lot of lifting right here, this line right here, the additional agreements line. Building and site design standards, is this something that you wouldn't want to go over? Okay, yeah. We are at 5, yes.
Building site standards. Jared kind of went over the cooling evaporative type scenarios. What would happen with that? They would also be constructed along with our building and fire codes, which we constantly update. And there's been a little bit of things with size of buildings and things like that recently, but nothing too out of the ordinary. HVAC, we know there's a lot of cooling that is associated with these. Noise, screening, all of those types of things. These are all pieces we need. We need to know how it's working, how you're using it within our gateway overlay district. It needs to be screened. You can't really have it out in the open. It has to be behind something. So another piece why we added that extra component in there to minimize waste. Talks about micros, and then it gets into the gateway overlay district. One of the other things that I know Jarek worked hard on was some of the light and how that facing downward, motion dimming, fixtures maintaining those ratings, all of the technical details on those pieces, including the, with the LED lights, we have like different temperatures and not exceeding that 3000 K, which is more of a yellow, not that bright blue lighting. And then just picking this 30-foot above ground level for lights. I know we have interstate lights that are quite a bit higher than that, and projecting that light out further. We want to keep it down and closer, which also includes making sure that we don't have more than 0.1 foot candles at the property line. And if you want to get into that detail, you'll have to talk to Jarek about that one. But the other piece of this, the landscape buffering, type C, as described, as Ellen pointed out. So a lot of those things, and we, with the building standards too. I think it's later on, but I'll just talk about it now. With the added piece of, I know we talk about how do we get all of these scenario, how do we know how much sound is going to be produced? And currently what's happening is you have buildings that are getting built in other parts of the country, obviously, but a specific one that we looked at was in Ellendale. What they're doing is they're bringing the operation up to 100% of what they use and the noises and all the things that they create. And what they're doing on the building side is creating a temporary certificate of occupancy that's only good for 30 days. And in that time frame, you need to prove what not temperatures, but what sounds, what lights, all of those things are doing. And a lot of these facilities in my building world that I'm looking at, they're so big that they're separate buildings. So we don't just have one building that's going to get a certificate of occupancy from my office. You have probably 5, maybe 6 buildings that are actually one building that are separate. A great example is the one that you're sitting in right now. I don't know if you knew this, but this auditorium is a building. When you walk out that door, that's another building. So there's I think 5 in this school facility alone. So when we look at that, temp CO, make sure it's operating at what we've described in this ordinance as the correct standards. After that's approved, then we can give them the certificate for that section and move on to the next section. And that's currently what is happening at those facilities. I spoke with building people that have permits and things like that. So we added that in. I know that's probably later on in that conversation, but just wanted to throw that in. I'll let Jarek do.
Yeah, I guess we're down to performance tables if we're following along in the ordinance. We did separate performance requirements out from specific sections of the ordinance so that the other sections can refer back to the performance table section. So this is where you would find specific decibel limits related to daytime, nighttime, residential, commercial, and industrial properties, as well as the DBG, this is G-weighted infrasound limits that would be associated with a special low frequency and infrasound audit that is our right to do as a part of the conditional use permit. So the reason that isn't part of the modeling piece up front is because equipment manufacturer data often doesn't include that, and we would get pushback from applicants saying that we have unrealistic ordinances that they would need to comply with. So we're trying to keep everything in the realm of possibility while still closing all regulatory gaps that we possibly can. Nothing super groundbreaking in here. We do have specific language in here that would say, mixed use zones are going to be treated as the more restrictive residential zone. Something that we should probably include. I think that schools would fall under commercial zoning district right now. That's a change that we think that we should make is schools would be considered under the more restrictive residential zone. So that's maybe a suggestion for if we have a contingent motion today, that would be maybe a good one to think about. We also have, just as a catch-all, noise generated from the facility also has to comply with our existing noise nuisance requirements in the rest of our code. In here, we also have vibration displacement limitations. These are from the Federal Transit Agency, associated typically with railroad construction. So these are long time vetted numbers here, and they are pretty representative of residential, commercial, and industrial vibration limitations. We do have an exception for emergency operations, and we specifically call out that emergency generator testing is not considered an emergency operation. That's something that's a loophole that many developers use to get around some of these performance requirements, is they have emergency generators that are being tested day round, year round, and they consider those quote-unquote emergency operations and should not be subject to performance requirements. So we're explicitly stating that they are subject to the performance requirements. Commissioning and acoustic verification, this is basically where we take what they modeled as part of their permitting application, they go through the development process, and then when they're trying to when they start firing things up, we're going to go back in there and verify. And if we find that they're out of compliance, throttle until you are in compliance, and then institute improvements that show that you will become compliant. And then you're allowed to try again, but nobody will be able to nobody will be allowed to operate until they're in compliance. Ongoing enforcement and oversight. We have measurement standards defined here that would show what kind of spot testing would be done to check compliance throughout the life of a facility. Routine operations, this is for emergency generator testing. Once again, just defining, they can test one at a time, they can test 4 at a time, as long as they are meeting performance requirements. I know that some people will say, well, we want them to test all of them all at once and get it over with, and that's better than having a generator being tested every single day, every single second of every single day, and being a constant issue. What we're saying is that it's up to you as long as you are meeting our performance requirements. We're not going to tell you what to do. Continued verification and enforcement. We have, at the discretion of the city, a special audit may be ordered to verify sound, infrasound, and vibration compliance. So this is where we are doing our spot checks. We don't have any sort of annual predictable timing on that. We want to be able to do it whenever we feel it's necessary, and we want to address issues that might come up. And then end of life. This was, in our comment period, the most popular section, the end of life section. Decommissioning and abandonment. We have the 125% bonding requirement associated with the decommissioning process. We are requiring them to bring the land back to its original state, with the caveat that we want to encourage plans for reuse. So our thought process is, by requiring that decommissioning bond, reuse plans would reduce the bonding requirement and therefore be mutually beneficial for the community and for a developer. So that's we tried to include language to strike that balance. And then something, there's still a lot that maybe could be talked about. Is 12 months right? Is 6 months right? Is 125% of the engineer's cost right? But I mean, we're through the meat of the ordinance right now, and I can try and answer any questions that you might have left.
Questions? Jarek or Jordan?
Mr. Chairman, this isn't so much a question, but a comment on, you discussed the development agreement, and I think that was one of the most important additions that you added to this ordinance. The development agreement is an enforceable legal document. Gives the city great flexibility to deal with any particular project. If there's issues that come up that aren't specified in the ordinance, this provision allows the city to enter into an agreement that covers those issues. And even if the applicant could satisfy every other provision in the ordinance, if they can't get an agreement with the city, a development agreement, they cannot build. So I think this is a huge provision that I think probably sometimes gets overlooked, but I'm glad you included it.
I got a real quick question. If I get Nikon to come and build cameras in a manufacturing, are we going to use the sound, the noise for other manufacturing besides data centers?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter. We don't. I mean, this is the only place that would have these specific requirements in our ordinance. But, I mean, I think through this process, it's been kind of eye-opening in that maybe we should bolster other pieces of our ordinance to have similar protections. And I think it makes sense that if you're going to treat one developer one way, it would make sense that you want to treat other developments in a similar fashion. So I agree.
Thank you. And Attorney Oster, is this okay with you?
Chair Robinson, Commissioners, are you referring just to the ordinance generally? Yes, I have reviewed the ordinance and participated in the drafting of the ordinance as well.
Thank you.
Questions? Could you walk us through if, let's say today you come out and my sound is out of compliance. What, can you walk me through what that would look like starting tomorrow?
Starting tomorrow, we would send a letter requiring mandated throttling. So we would continue the sound observation and require throttling down to the point where we are observing compliance. At that point in time, a 60-day cure period would start, in which they would make likely physical improvements to their facility, putting up sound walls, planting trees, changing the location that equipment ejects air or sound. Once again, going back to, we are not dictating means and methods. We're demanding performance. So how they come into compliance would be up to them. And then if they have continued violations or they're refusing to do that, we would be pulling the permit, and then that would be a different situation beyond the scope of this ordinance, I would say.
And how about timeline? Is there a hard date, or is it, as long as I'm putting in effort, I'm still operating?
We have a 60-day cure period. That would be the requirement or the expectation that they cure within that 60 days. While they are mandating, or while they're throttling to be in compliance during the 60-day cure period. So they are not out of compliance during that cure period.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Robinson, this is going to be monitored continuously, or only if there's a request from the public or something about excessive noise? How are they going to determine, it's supposed to be 4 points, north, south, east, and west around the property line. If they're going to be monitoring that continuously, how real time are they going to say, okay, wait a minute, this one just went over the decibel limit, now we're going to have to throttle down, or how is that going to work?
We Chair Robinson, Commissioner Renner, we do have it tied to spot checks, but a continuous quote unquote spot check would be, I guess maybe we would have to make that determination. We are trying to give ourselves latitude to do the checking and compliance checking at our discretion, and continuous monitoring. I don't know if we would end up at that point, but it's something that we've talked about. Yeah, something worth considering.
And so when you utilize a third-party entity to measure this, who do you order that up? Is that through the city?
Chair Robinson, I think the language specifically says paid for by the developer and selected by the city, and if it doesn't, it should. So.
Questions? Jordan, Jarek, we're ready to move on for now. Again, I'll reiterate a couple points here. State your name for the public record. Sign in, please. Again, we're not at this stage at a Q&A section, so questions will be noted by the city and answer them after the comment period. With that, Mr. Neubauer, are you my clock? Okay. And with that, we'll move on. I will now open it up for public comment. Again, 3 minutes and for an hour.
Hi, my name is Eden Stramer and I live in Mandan. I support a moratorium on building data centers until we have an ironclad ordinance that will protect our city, people, wildlife, natural resources, and land. The proposed ordinance is much better than the initial draft, but I do have some concerns. Page 3, Section 1B defines types of data centers by their electrical capacity. As defined by the ordinance, a minor data center has a designated electrical capacity between 100 and 6,000 kilowatts. A data center operating at 6,000 kilowatts for any length of time uses enough electricity to power nearly 5,000 average U.S. households for the same length of time. And this, according to the ordinance, is only a minor data center. U.S. Census data from 2025 shows that Mandan only has 10,465 households. One minor data center could use nearly the equivalent amount of power of half of all Mandan City households, skyrocketing our electric bills. I ask that the Commission add an electrical capacity cap to the ordinance, capping proposed data centers at 1,000 kilowatts. At the very least, we must prohibit major data centers from being built. Page 6, Section 3B sets a minimum floor area ratio but does not set a maximum. If we absolutely must allow data centers to be built in our town, the goal should be to limit their size to keep them small enough to mitigate the damage they will cause to our community and environment. Nobody wants a hyperscale data center in their backyard. I propose that we include a maximum building size of 20 to 50,000 square feet. Page 12, Section 4A.6a talks about developing temporary or permanent housing for construction workers. If one of the benefits of building a data center is the construction jobs it provides to the community, those jobs should be limited to the community, meaning local companies and local workers only. We should not be building man camps for out-of-state workers, nor should we allow an influx of out-of-state workers to drive up our rental and housing markets, as has happened in Williston and Ellendale. There should be a requirement within this ordinance that short-term and long-term jobs will be filled by local workers. I also have some comments that I did not see addressed in the ordinance. Data centers must be prohibited from applying for tax-exempt status. The setback from residential zones or potential future residential zones must be at least 1 mile. Any electricity generated by the data center company for the site must be generated from renewable resources. Asphalt and concrete at the site must be limited, with native flora planted instead to minimize ambient heat and dust bowl conditions. And finally, I demand the prohibition of NDAs signed between private entities and public officials. Public officials work for the public, not for the billionaire class. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
And go, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe Robinson. I'm a resident of Mandan here. First off, I'd just like to thank everybody here for just showing up and the ability to have an opinion and have a voice on this matter. Obviously, people in the community care about this. I just wanted to bring up a quick point about World Health Organization and the American National Standards Institute that have done studies that have shown that classrooms should not exceed up to 35 decibels to maintain optimal learning conditions. Now, obviously, this data center is going to be fairly close to 2 schools. I don't know how we do studies to maintain or prove that we're going to be able to keep these classrooms quiet enough. And an average data center is running at about, according to LSARS, which is an abbreviation for some scientific stuff, but 60 to 80 decibels at a constant time. With that being half a mile to 1 mile range audible frequencies, which you're hearing it at. So the biggest concern I guess I have as a resident here is, especially with a child who will be attending these schools, with that and the Frontiers study that was done in Northern Virginia, where 70% of the world's internet traffic runs through, where most data centers are in the United States, has shown that these decibel levels have impacted, just from 2019 to 2023, learning and cognitive development in children in the surrounding area. This is new studies. Obviously, this is the first of its kind for a peer-reviewed study. This isn't something that's had a lot of time to be looked into, but it is a point of entry to look into this as something that's concrete and peer-reviewed. And on a second less environmental point here, I think it is a point of concern for this company to be owned by a foreign country, having access to our data. Now, depending on who they sell the server space to and who has access to it, they'll be able to see much more information. But even if it's just broad information, they can see your IP address, they can see your metadata, they can see how much information you're using at what times a day, and they can build profiles off of you. Even if you're doing nothing wrong, this is still a privacy concern. This is not okay. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Skay, and my husband and I, Jim, live in the extraterritorial zone. And the extraterritorial zone, I think, has a particular vulnerability to it, just because those of us residing in that zone don't have a right to vote on city matters. So that's really important to us. But I did want to mention that North Dakota law says that zoning regulations must be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan. And I know that many great people in this community have worked on comprehensive plans for the city of Mandan. The city has spent millions of dollars working with contractors to come up with comprehensive plans. And it's very important that we follow those comprehensive plans. Also is very important is that we have a city planner. And we do not have a city planner. I don't know if any of you guys realize that or not. It's been vacant for a very long time. I also went out to the website today just to check for the heck of it on my way over, and under Human Resources, still no city planner posting. No job posting out there for a city planner. And a city planner shouldn't be a contracted engineering firm person with the city. It really should be an employee of the city. And that's a very, very important job. So I'm just asking that the city please take that into consideration. It needs to be done. Also, in North Dakota Century Code, it says that that when property and zoning is identified, it should be given reasonable consideration to the character of each district and its peculiar suitability for that particular uses. So, if you're considering an area that has agricultural land, established homes, acreage, residential properties, pasture, existing opening space, trails, wetlands, drainage areas, wildlife habitat, parkland or potential parkland, productive soils, rural roads, relatively low density development. Those areas are not an empty industrial site waiting for use. It's an existing land use environment with established agricultural, residential, and open space characteristics. And industrial zoning would fundamentally change the character. And if you had a city planner, they would likely say that industrial zones butted up against a school district is not, or against 2 to 3 schools is probably not the best idea of a city plan. That's it.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Seth Owens. I am a conservation photographer and a outdoor educator. I live in Mandan. Like I've talked about at the last couple meetings that I've seen a lot of you guys at, I'm here to talk for the wildlife that can't show up here, fill seats, and talk for themselves. I am adamantly against the center going up, but if it has to, I think our ordinance currently has a good framework that can be expanded upon to benefit wildlife and the people that call Mandan home. I'd like to see an expanded form of the environmental assessment section, which I believe is 3E1. The word comprehensive is holding a lot of weight there, and I don't think that comprehensive is nearly specific enough to talk about what we need. We need to include North Dakota Game and Fish, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and third-party surveys in that matter. Expand wildlife impacts across property lines. We know that things move. A deer doesn't respect that it's going to stay on this property for the rest of its life, and migratory birds fly over the Missouri River corridor all the time. I'd like to weigh the presence of sensitive, threatened, and endangered species into these plans as well. The Missouri River Corridor holds at least 3 species year-round that are on the threatened and endangered species list, and we have several others that fly over just the Mandan-Bismarck area. And then include environmental impact for water cycle, the availability of carbon sequestration through prairie grasses, and the loss of habitat, a lot of which is native untouched prairie. I'm very happy to see under some of the lighting standards, like 5A, 3B, with shielded lighting and a certain temperature. That's fantastic. It's a great start. I would urge that we have rules in place to protect lighting even more specifically during migratory seasons. Light and noise can have huge impacts on waterfowl migration, which North Dakota is called the duck factory for a reason. We produce more waterfowl in just North Dakota boundaries than the entirety of Canada. And I like to duck hunt. A lot of people do, and it'd be a shame to lose that. For the vegetative buffers, I'd like to see expanded on that to also include some regulations for reseeding. I'd also like to see that vegetative buffers also include native prairie plants in those facilities. Under the community improvement or mitigation section, I'd really like to see a section be added that requires the permittee to directly invest in wildlife habitat improvement programs in the Morton County area. Prairie ecosystems are on a dramatic decline globally, and North Dakota has already lost about 70% of its native prairie. A direct loss of habitat due to data center construction must be remedied elsewhere. Permittees must be held accountable for the environmental impacts that they have on habitat for wildlife and must offset their damages on publicly accessible grassland landscapes in their region.
We've hit 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Priska Gretsch, and I also live in Mandan's extraterritorial zoning area. Although we are directly affected by your decision, we cannot vote for the city commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I've written several letters already, but I want to come back to one fundamental issue, zoning. When we bought our 2-acre lot 4 years ago, we knew it was zoned residential. We never imagined building a commercial car wash on the rest of our property and asking for a conditional use permit. We would have been told no immediately because that use would be incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood. That is the purpose of zoning. Zoning should mean something. I'm so nervous. It separates compatible land uses from incompatible ones and provides predictability. Homeowners rely on zoning when making one of the biggest financial investments of their lives. The land west of Highway 1806 includes agricultural land. While many of us expected that someday it might become residential as Mandan grew, we never expected it could become the site of a massive industrial-scale data center complex. Conditional use permits are intended for uses that remain compatible with the surrounding area when certain conditions are met. But if a use requires extraordinary setbacks, extensive noise mitigation, lighting restrictions, and other significant protections just to reduce its impact, then I believe an important question must be asked. Is it truly an appropriate conditional use in that zoning district? If every agricultural parcel can become a potential industrial site through a conditional use permit, then the agricultural designation itself begins to lose its meaning. If a billion-dollar developer options agricultural land, they know exactly how that land is zoned before they do so. Shouldn't the zoning itself guide developers toward appropriate locations rather than asking established neighborhoods to adapt to an incompatible use? This is not a matter of being for or against progress. It's a matter of how that progress is implemented and where. The ordinance you adopt will establish a precedent for years to come. I ask you to carefully consider the long-term interests of homeowners, future residents, and the character of our community alongside any promised economic benefits. Please Leave this community better than you found it. Protect the things that make people choose Mandan in the first place. I respectfully ask you to make these decisions with great care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to have this public forum. My name is Sue Zeman. I'm a retired nurse and a lifelong resident of Mandan. I went to school here. My husband and I have raised our family here, and now our grandchild is growing up here. I've already submitted my recommendations for changes to the proposed ordinances, so I won't go through that tonight. Instead, I want to explain why getting these ordinances right is so important. I've seen Mandan through good times and bad. I stayed because this is my home, and this is where my heart is. I live in an established neighborhood near the proposed site. My neighbors and I never imagined something could be built near us that might change our quality of life or make people question whether they still want to live in their own homes. That is why these ordinances matter. Once this facility is built, the ordinance becomes our protection. As a retired nurse, I look at this from a health perspective. A hyperscale data center could operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for decades. What will continuous noise mean for sleep, stress, and quality of life? What will low frequency and total noise mean for the nearby families and the children in our schools? What pollutants will backup generators release into our air? What happens to the wastewater, and how will we know our groundwater remains protected? But perhaps the most important question is, what don't we know? When I started researching, I discovered communities across the country putting moratoriums on data center development, and I questioned why. Lynn County, Iowa had already passed a data center ordinance. Just months later, it imposed an 18-month moratorium to determine whether its regulations were strong enough as more information became available. Other communities are asking the same questions about noise, water, health, homes, and quality of life. They aren't necessarily saying no to economic development. They're saying, before we build, let's make sure we get this right. Mandan has that opportunity today. Economic development is important, but it should not require the people already living here to sacrifice their health, their homes, or their quality of life. Please write these ordinances for the people who will live with this project for decades. Don't write them for the best case scenario. Write them for the day something goes wrong. Because after it's built, we can't go back and wish we had done more. Protect Mandan now while we still can. Thank
you. My name is Mavis Wall, and I have already submitted my 6 pages of recommended changes. Every recommendation I made was based on an ordinance already approved by another city or another county. They are not blue sky ideas. They are existing real-world protections. Tonight, I want to emphasize one thing. Every word that you put or fail to put into this ordinance will shape the future of our schools, our children, and our entire community for generations. After attending the Stark Power open house, I became aware of a very clear and present danger. When I asked what noise standards would be followed and what would happen if the actual noise was louder than predicted, the answer was simple. We will do whatever the ordinances require. The ordinances will set the fence lines for this corporation. Strong fence lines will protect us. Weak fence lines full of gaps will leave everything we value unprotected. We will be at the mercy of a foreign developer instead of having the protection of our laws. Economic growth, jobs, and development are important, but they must not come at the price of our children or the quality of life of the people who already live here. Now, we have heard that if the ordinances are too strict, the city could face legal challenges. Maybe there will be a fight, but then really the question becomes, who will you be fighting for? Will you fight to make it easier for a foreign corporation to build what they want? Or will you fight for us? Will you fight to ensure that if they come here, they will follow rules strong enough to protect our children, our neighborhoods, and our future? Years from now, none of us should ever have to say, well, we knew there were risks, but we were afraid to make the rules too strong. Please make this ordinance strong enough that we never have to say those words. And to end, if there is going to be a fight, make sure the commission is fighting for its people, not a foreign corporation.
Hi, my name is Jake Schmidt. I'm here to respectfully urge you to vote no on the current draft of Section 101-1112, or send it back to the drawing board as it's written. Data centers are intensive industrial uses. They require large amounts of electricity, often supported by on-site or nearby generation, and can produce continuous low-frequency noise and infrasound that travels far beyond typical industrial sound. The draft allows these facilities in the MB and MX districts with a conditional use permit. Notice goes only to properties within a half mile, and the proposed noise limits for residential areas 55 dBA or 50 for daytime, 50 dBA for nighttime, with the corresponding DVC and 90 dBG infrasound ceilings. Still leave nearby homes, schools exposed to constant background noise that many residents find disruptive to sleep, concentration, and quality of life. The potential site under discussion sits less than a mile from Mandan Middle School and Mandan High School, with homes in between. That proximity raises legitimate concerns about noise, traffic during construction, and long-term impacts on children and families. I acknowledge the draft includes positive elements: prohibition on using municipal potable water or groundwater for evaporating cooling, required acoustic studies, and enforcement provisions. But these protections are not yet strong enough. I ask you to require three specific improvements before any further consideration: a minimum setback of at least 1 mile from schools, residents, and residential zoning; stricter continuous noise and infrasound limits with independent third-party verification before and after construction; clearer location restrictions that direct these facilities away from growing residential school areas towards more suitable industrial land farther from the community core. This ordinance will shape Mandan's future for decades. The current draft does not adequately protect public health, safety, and the character of our neighborhoods. Please vote no tonight and/or send this back to the drawing board. Thank you.
My name is Sheila Freilich. I want to say thank you to all the volunteers who helped and circulate this petition, of which I have 1,460 signatures. Thank you to all the citizens of Mandan who took the time to stand up and sign this petition. I have already emailed it to all of you commissioners. We, the people of Mandan, North Dakota, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, have created and signed this petition. Today I present you the voices of these 1,460 citizens represented by these signatures. We respectfully ask that you hear our voices and take action to protect the future of our community by placing a temporary moratorium on all data center development as requested in the petition. Alternatively, we ask that you vote to prohibit data centers, but if we could at least get the moratorium for a year to give us all a chance to look at the ordinance, etc. On behalf of the citizens of Mandan, we ask that you do your due diligence, carefully consider these concerns of the people you represent, and do everything within your authority to protect and serve our community. And as long as I still have a little time left, I have also been going through the ordinance matching the Mandan one to the Morton County one. Mavis Wall made some great points. We do need to put a lot more teeth into the Mandan one. If you could start by matching Morton's, switch it what you need to for the city, and then I don't know all of Mavis's suggestions, but I'm sure they're excellent. We need a lot more teeth in there. As far as I'm going to jump to one of the things that I noticed was that in the Mandan one, it says that they have to be built in zone MB and M or MX. I didn't see an MX on the map, and the map that I looked at said it was zoned residential, the area that we're talking about. But then I just found out tonight that that area was rezoned last week at the city meeting for residential ag. Is that a stepping stone? I may be wrong on that, but that's what I was told.
We've hit 3 minutes.
Pardon?
We've hit 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Where do you want me to hand these to? Can I bring them up? Okay. Thank you.
My name is Terry Lee Mastel. We have been residents in Mandan for 44 years and business owners on the Strip for 44 years. Outside my front door is pasture, and that pasture is the proposed data site location. A hyper data center is to be put on brownfield ground, not pasture or greenfield. This site is near 3 schools, Mandan High School, Mandan Middle School, and Red Trail Elementary. It is also next to many beautiful homes on Old Red Trail and new developments and apartments in the growing North Mandan area and all the businesses and hotels. My question is, why would you even consider having a data center in this inappropriate location? The ordinance draft is very weak. On page 10, it has a table that allows continuous noise of 100 decibels in industrial districts. Decibels of 85 to 96 are loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage in under 2 hours without proper protection. That means we could go deaf. In addition, this causes nerve damage, anxiety, and other illnesses. They use tonal noise in prisons for torture. Do you really want to do that to your students and population? The setback of half a mile is not enough. It should be more like 1 to 2 miles away, or even more than that. Our homes will be worth nothing because no one will be able to live in this area. How much water will this data center take? How much will our electricity bill go up? Also, in regard to zoning, the land should stay agriculture and not be changed to industrial. In other words, we really don't need a data center. There is one being built 25 miles away in Center. The ordinance draft needs much improvement. Please vote for a moratorium to do more research an environmental study, or better yet, a permanent ban of data centers for this location. We have been blessed with our God-given natural resources of clean air, clean water, and peace and quiet for our souls. Why should we give our very breath and soul to a data center? In conclusion,
3 minutes, Terry. Thank
you.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Sean Stevenson. I'm a union steelworker and very familiar with dangers in the workplace, and so I fight for safety every day. I think we need time to study the serious risks of this project poses during our severe North Dakota winters. First, we face winter gas supply strain during extreme cold snaps. Regional heating demands skyrocket. If this facility gas supply is curtailed during a freeze, it will switch to massive diesel backup generators pumping heavy emissions directly next to Mandan High School. Second, cold, dense winter air acts as a megaphone. The persistent low-frequency hum from generators and cooling fans will travel much farther and sound significantly louder in surrounding neighborhoods and classrooms, especially since we lose all natural foliage buffers in the winter. Finally, the massive amount of moisture released by this facility will instantly freeze in sub-zero temperatures. This creates localized ice fog fumes right next to the major high school and Interstate 94, creating a severe visibility hazard for student drivers and school buses. Give Mandan time to demand rigorous winter operation studies and secure legally binding protections. Let's protect our students and our community in all 4 seasons. This is not Phoenix, Arizona. This is Mandan, North Dakota.
Yes, Chair Robinson and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kimball Banks, and I live just north of where that data center is proposed to be set. Now more than ever, because of the push to develop these centers, local communities such as ours need to protect themselves by ensuring that these centers are sited and constructed in a manner that ensures that protection. Given that, I have 3 suggestions. The first concerns setbacks. When I went through your draft ordinance, I could not find a reference to the half-mile setback, so that's new. If you're going to do it, you got to put it in the ordinance. But I also think that you ought to look at the setback that is in the proposed Morton County ordinance, and that's 3/4 of a mile. And in assessing the setback, you have to look at the siting of that data center. It's right on below the breaks of the Missouri, or above the Missouri River. So the sound issues there are going to be different than, say, at Hanover or Ellendale. The second is about the proposed environmental assessment, Section 3A. I suggest the city require the developer to hire a third-party contractor to prepare a socioeconomic impact study with the city retaining approval of the contractor. The city and residents needs to know what the potential socioeconomic impacts will be from an independent third party, not just from the developer. The public needs to know also needs the opportunity to review the comment. You are requiring a biological study and an archaeological survey, which is commendable, but those are not the only environmental impacts. There will be socioeconomic impacts, such as how construction operation will affect our police force, fire and rescue, schools, health infrastructure, housing, traffic, and other aspects of Mandan's infrastructure. Construction will undoubtedly require a large number of temporary construction workers for several years. This influx and their departure from after construction will impact Mandan's infrastructure, and the city needs to plan for these impacts. The proposed data center will go in an area surrounded by residents and just north of the new high schools and 2 other schools. The high school is on 1806, which will most likely be the access during construction, interrupting access to and from the school and the surrounding neighborhood. Finally, the third concerns decommissioning and abandonment, Section 8A. Subsection A2 specifies that performance bonds should be updated every 5 years. The city should specify that it will levy a penalty against the developer or operator if the city finds it is out of compliance. Penalty could be revocation of the permit until the compliance issues are corrected.
We hit time, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair Robinson and members of the Mandan Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Signe Snortland, and I live just north of Mandan. Thank you for holding this meeting in a venue large enough to accommodate the hundreds of Mandan residents determined to develop a data center ordinance strong enough to address our concerns about Stark Power Ltd's proposed data center and power plant in our quiet Mandan neighborhood. Last week, I sent you my specific comments on Mandan's draft data center ordinance, to which I hope you gave due consideration. My first concern is the siting of a data center and power plant in Mandan. Regarding MX zoning districts, it is referred to on page 4 under C applicability. The current City of Mandan zoning map does not include MX zones, which is land used for heavy industrial establishments. In fact, the Mandan-Wharton County approved plan from the Bismarck-Mandan Regional Land Use Plan shows industrial development outside of Mandan and not in residential areas. My second concern is the noise allowed under this ordinance. The World Health Organization recommends that nighttime noise outside bedroom windows be under 40 dBA to avoid waking or shifting to lighter sleep stages. This is to prevent negative health effects and sleep disruption. In fact, 30 to 35 decibels is the acceptable range for an acceptably quiet rural or suburban bedroom. Yet this proposed ordinance sets the acceptable nighttime noise limit at 50 dBA in a residential district on Table 1, page 13. This is way too loud for restful sleep. My third concern is the lack of designated setbacks from homes and schools. The draft Morton County ordinance specifies a 3/4 mile setback. The first draft of the Mandan ordinance had a 1/2 mile setback. This ordinance has none. This is unacceptable. I suggest you empower a subcommittee to draft the next version of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hamitakiapi. Hello, my relatives. Wambli Numpa, Emichiapia. My name is Two Eagles. I'm a pipe carrier, and the prayer that focuses the holy pipe that owns me has to do with healing the sacred hoop. And after massive amounts of time spent examining this, I can tell you right now, there is nothing in this that heals the sacred hoop. Nothing. Everything that the data center affects is physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional. More than that, it affects all the other species that live here, because I head 3 corporations, and one is Indian Made Products, whose land is precisely on the east side of a barbed wire fence. Setback? What setback? And the church I head, which is non-denominational and non-sectarian, worships by helping others. Meadowlarks. Populations are in sharp decline across North Dakota due to habitat loss. The western meadowlark is threatened by intensive agricultural and industrial practices, tilling, early haying, and it destroy nests, fledglings, and adults. We have several kinds of bumblebees on our land. Bees can recognize humans' faces. And they are all critically endangered. You know, if you marry in haste, you will repent at leisure. And my thought as we tell you that we want you to protect us is, if you don't fight for us, who are you fighting for? Whose side are you on? You don't have to like me, and I do not care if you do. I have a job to do, and I will die doing it. Probably with a smile. But you will hear me, and you will remember everything I say, because once you know a thing, you cannot unknow it. Be careful of this. I am the CVO of these organizations. That's the Chief Visionary Officer, because nobody goes anywhere, good, bad, or indifferent, without a vision in place first. This proposed set of regulations is nowhere near strong enough. And most of who you will hurt are people who can't or don't speak for themselves. They are the Inaji Oyate, the standing up nation, what grows from our Holy Mother, the earth. The Hupahu Oyate, the winged ones, and so on.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Jacob. I'm from Mandan, and I'll try and make this quick and relatable. The current decibel readings that you have up there, at least according to my research, are about the same as human speech. You're going to have students trying to do calculus and nurses working a night shift trying to sleep with those decibel readings. Please do better for our community.
My name is Stacy Bendish. I'm from Mandan, North Dakota. I'm going to go against the grain and say I'm not against data centers. I think they're part of progress. Everybody in this room, 95% of you have cell phones that you save stuff on every day, what your daughter ate, what your mother did. That's what data centers are for, and that's what they do. That's part of progress. Anything that was ever developed in this county, in this city, was probably zoned agricultural before it got rezoned to industrial or commercial. That's how progress works. Do I think those sound decibels up there are right? No, I think they should probably be a little lower than 55. I don't think we need a one-year moratorium to go forward for this community, this country, this city, or this county. We do need to take time, but a one-year moratorium is not going to give you time. What it's going to do is kill the opportunity. In North Dakota right now, there's 0.82 people for every job. So if you're going to build anything, whether it's a data center in the center or it's a data center here in Mandan, you're going to have out-of-state workers. Now, I've worked heavy construction for 25 years. I've been an out-of-state worker. We're not the devil. We're part of the progress. We spend money in your community. They're going to spend money in your community. That's going to make some of you very wealthy or that have businesses that they got to rely on. That's what business is for. That's what construction workers do. Now, you've done a good job starting out with your plan here. I like a lot of it. I think it's a good start. You may have to tweak a few things, but it's workable. Now, if you're just against technology and progress, well, then I can't help you. But there's a lot of people that don't have time to come to this meeting, that work blue collar. They're still at work at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. They probably could make a lot of money building these things. And hey, us workers need jobs. You can have your 2 acres of heaven, but this school was built across the street from an oil refinery and next to the interstate. And those aren't quiet things either. So if you make this thing, the technology and the science is there to make it quiet enough. Not like the one in Williston that was built Wild West Rodeo, but it can happen. They can be good things, but the leadership does have to do their job. I think you guys are on the right track. Moratorium is not going to help anything if it's a year long. All it's going to do is take these people, take their stuff to Georgia or Ohio. And if you think what we got in North Dakota, Ohio's got something about 80 times what we got here in North Dakota going right now. Don't want that much, but for our state and our infrastructure and our economy, this is the good thing. This will give us more tax revenue than all the 1.5 acre, 2 acre little pieces of heaven people developments we got north in 806 ever will for this town. Those developments are actually bad because they're low density housing, no tax base in them. Counties and cities go broke on that. So this is the opposite. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being understanding of my opinion.
Hamidakapi Tatankanaji Mielo. My name is Joseph Whiteeyes. I come from the Cheyenne River Reservation. I'm just downstream. This water is just as much mine as it is yours. I work for an environmental nonprofit called Honor the Earth. On there, for those of you that are really against data centers, we have all the information you need. I'm going to keep this really short and simple. First off, I'm going to start by saying it's not these current or proposed data centers running my phone. He was right. We don't need a one-year moratorium. We need an indefinite moratorium all across the United States. There's 3 points I just want to talk about. One is the governance over the data that will be stored within these data centers. I haven't seen that talked about in here at all. When talking about the types of data, will it be safe? Who's liable for the illegal data being stored? When I talk about illegal data, these companies will hold child pornography just like they hold our information that we have in our phones, our photos, our texts, our chats, and everything there. Who's going to be liable for that? I would like to see something written in here that would talk about who's liable for the illegal data that would be stored. For other folks, in relationship to data center build out, I think one thing to be mindful is that this data center will not be beneficial for this community, especially when talking about surveillance, militarism, authoritarianism, privacy rights, and then nuclear energy usage related to data center build out, which would lead to the coal phase out, leaving those who love the so-called clean coal without jobs. Other things that weren't really touched on were tax revenue generation for the community. What does that look like? Can that be also added in here? Governing these multi-million or billion-dollar companies on what types of investments they should have into this community. Can the city of Mandan incorporate that into this plan? Other things are around water standards. Where is the water coming from? What pipes will it tap into? Commercial, agricultural, industrial? Will they have their own water line? What is the baseline on both water quality and quantity of usage? Does it cover chemical spills? What are the rules for discharge, water storage, and water management? We're not only talking about these chemicals being released, we also have to take into consideration the water temperature that will be released back into the area here. What legal mechanisms will be used to clean up any of the PFAS or pollution that will be discharged from these data centers? I encourage this commission to pass a minimum one-year moratorium until y'all can figure out what you want, or even push for a permanent moratorium. I'm asking that you give these residents some ease, a peace of mind that they aren't being invaded by a multi-billion-dollar corporation while they're simply just trying to live. I want to leave you with this question: is do you really want to turn your people into the new Indians? Nowhere to run, nowhere to go, left to fight for what little they have left to call their own. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Juania Locke. I come from Standing Rock. And in 2016, we were held at gunpoint by Morton County, North Dakota, and Energy Transfer, a corporation, just like that's coming to your community right now. And the easement wasn't even granted. It was illegally constructed and illegally operating right now. So I wanted to remind the Mandan residents to hold your ground, to know that Standing Rock is standing with you guys and protecting your community. I also would like to request from the committee that you have free and informed prior consent of your constituents before you allow an infrastructure to come in that will be detrimental to their community, their drinking water, and their environment, and their air quality. I also do request a moratorium because there's so many questions that are unknown out there. IEN, Indigenous Environmental Network, also has a page. Honor the Earth has a page. These are all environmental justice orgs that are local from this land historically. So please include us. Also reminding you, I saw that you guys have federal agencies as part of your policy up on the screen. That does include federally recognized tribes. So please contact them and let them know, and contact their THBOs so they're part of the surveying and cultural surveys of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Carlene Soul. I am a citizen of Mandan, and I have submitted some comments and questions to the Planning and Zoning Commission already, and I'm here to expand on a few points. Toward the acoustical impacts, the assessments must be considered beyond the property line. Sound doesn't know property line barriers. The reverberations and weather conditions affect sound travel. Sound corridors can pop up in our varied terrain, and a single assessment is not going to take these into consideration, especially when the geography of the site has so many different elevations. Multiple assessments must be conducted to account for all of those variances. A reporting process for individual homeowners must be established, and a community remediation fund should be established by the developers for the unique situations where a specific home, neighborhood, street is being affected by the acoustics of a data center. To mitigate traffic and to reduce the demand on our infrastructure, I suggest that we require a railroad spur to the construction site to bring in all of the construction elements, and packaging should be returned to the manufacturer so that our resources are not overwhelmed, especially our landfills, when it comes to all of the components. A civic assessment should be conducted to ensure this community can absorb such an acute level of growth. Considerations must be made to existing businesses and their employment needs, the civil servant needs of the community, and funds should be established in advance to help grow those departments in advance, not in hindsight. The current Stark proposals timeline suggests that the environmental assessments are already occurring, and they're beginning the utility interconnection process. This was based on their boards at the meeting this last week. Mid-stage development is to commence this fall. It is almost this fall. So I respectfully request a moratorium be implemented so that the city is not unduly influenced or pressured to finalize an ordinance from potential developers or suitors. With 1,500 to 2,000 new projects currently planned, this one may end up being scrapped, and then our city is just going to be left with the rubble to clean up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean Lingenfelder. I'm a resident of Mandan. We've had a lot of really great speakers talking about decibel levels and whatnot. One thing that your ordinance fails to address is electricity costs. MDU's proposed rate hike of 14% ceased public comment today, and the Energy Information Administration of the United States government notes that post-data center you'll see a raise in your electric bill of over 90%. That means that your electric bill can be expected to double should this data center go through. Furthermore, your ordinance, some people have addressed, is not strong enough to deal with corporations. You are assuming that your corporations that you're dealing with will react with you in good faith. They will not. Corporations have one motive: profit. They do not care about us. They do not care about you. They will come here, they will take what they need, they will leave us devastated. The previous speaker that mentioned tax revenue does not affect my electric bill. I am already at a negative deficit working my job. I work 40 hours a week. I'm an adult. I have a real job. I have the cheapest house in Mandan, quite literally, and I'm underwater, and you're going to double my electric bill. This is an affront to me and everyone in here. Furthermore, I think that the evidence of 12 different police officers in this room show that you know this is unpopular, that to even consider this as an option shows that you are willing to use the threat of police violence to intimidate us into trying to silence our voices. You are cowards. It is that simple. I cede my time.
My name is Ross Langang. I'm a resident of Mandan, and I left my notes in the balcony, so you'll have to apologize. This won't be as detailed as I had planned, but I will start by saying I am not entirely anti-AI. I, in fact, used it to understand some of the documents that have been up on the page throughout this meeting. A lot of technical and legal language that I would not have been able to, really wrap my head around otherwise. That being said, I do appreciate that there's been some effort, it sounds like, to close some of the loopholes. I appreciated a comment that the school should be explicitly under the residential limits, and I firmly agree with that. 55 to 65 decibels doesn't sound like much until you realize that decibels are logarithmic, which means 65 is literally double the sound of 55. So keep that in mind when we're thinking about these types of numbers. One of the other comments, though, I also heard was something along the lines, and I apologize, I don't have the exact wording, of that if we make things too restrictive, that the industry might find them realistic or unrealistic and not build here, which personally, if they can't meet our needs, then I think I'm actually fine with that. I also have concerns about enforcement, some of which have been raised by the people that have spoken before me, so I won't go too in-depth. A couple things that I noted in the draft, though. The pre-construction noise assessment, as I read it, it will be done by a professional hired by the applicant, so the company building the data center, which I feel leads directly to a potential conflict of interest and not getting us the reliable information that we need before the construction is completed. And then, as the previous commenter noted, once a giant building, multi-million thing is done, there's going to be a lot of pressure. Hey, we didn't meet our needs. Oh well, right? And I also noted a lack of proper deterrence. Things like a 60-day cure period seem very inadequate when it comes to multi-billion-dollar corporations. I think some meaningful fines, not a $50 slap on the wrist, would go a long way to actually encouraging good behavior from the corporations that are looking at building data centers in our backyards, literally. And I know that this hearing is not about a specific location, it's about this proposal, so I won't go into that side of things too much. I will just note that when we are considering proposals such as this and defining our rules and regulations, that we should also keep in mind that we are a city of people, not just a city of businesses and corporations and tax revenue to be raised. Thank you.
My name is Gene Zahersky Klein. I live in Mandan, and I just have one point to make briefly. After listening to some of these amazing testimonies, it only reiterates it more. But what I want to say is I think our first speaker, this young lady in front of me here, referenced it toward the end of what she was saying was a complete lack of anything I'm seeing about forbidding NDAs. I think any Mandan entity, municipal, committee member, politician, or anyone should be strongly urged to sign an NDA with this corporation. So that was all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now you'll be our final speaker.
Hello.
Thank you.
My name is Isaac Peterchuk. I'm 20 years old. I've lived in Mandan, North Dakota my whole entire life. Not only lived here, I've grown with Mandan for the last 20 years. I've seen a high school get built. I've seen a sports complex get built. I've seen so much growth in this area that it just devastates me to hear that we are looking to even have the conceptual idea that we're going to put something as harmful, because we hear all the information that every single person here has said. We hear it. It's harmful. We know it's harmful. Now, I do just want to applaud you guys. You've done a great job putting this up, something to regulate something as awful as a data center. But must I remind you that a medicated cancer is still a cancer? You can't sit here and you can't put all of this together and try to stop something as awful as this. We know that it's going to be in our backyards. We know that these things are going to be hurting us. And a lot of people out there are saying we have a lack of information. We have a lack of knowledge to what these data centers are doing. So maybe we should do 90 days to figure it out. But we have enough information to know that it's putting out harmful energy waves, and we're just okay with that. I mean, of these people sitting up here, how many of you have kids? Kids? Anybody have kids? Anybody have kids here? Would you just put a bomb right next to your kid and just hope one day it might not go off? It might not sit here and cause any harm to us. I have to ask you sitting up there, how many dollar bills did a company, not of this state, not of this country, but all the way across the world, how many zeros behind a dollar bill amount did they have to put to even make this a considerable thought to move forward on? I don't come here with anything written on a piece of paper. I didn't even think I was going to come up here and speak. All I hear is a number of people sitting in these stands, coming in a line, speaking concerns. That's all I see and that's all I hear. That's the voice of the people telling you, this is not something we should even consider putting regulations on. This is something we should consider not doing at all. That's all I have to say. I hope that each and every one of you make the correct decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, yep. Good. No, we hit 20 speakers, and
would you allow the next three to speak?
We just have 3 in the line? Okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you.
Hello, committee. My name is Heather Mouche Metcalf. I've been a member of this community for 10 years now. I'm a child care provider and a mom of 5. I urge you to straight up ban any data centers in our city. Set the example for other towns and cities in our state to do the same. There is not enough data on the safety of this being around schools, daycares, nursing facilities, and other sensitive spaces, let alone residential homes. What effects can this have on our growing children and teenagers at school? Are you willing to take responsibility for those harmed from this being built so close by? We just had this beautiful high school built, and who wants such an obnoxious eyesore right nearby? I have a child in middle school, one in high school, and triplets who will be starting school in a couple years. What irreversible damage could this do to them from attending schools right nearby? And what about the noise and environmental concerns and enjoying the outdoors for residents here? How loud will this be for kids' events, our sporting events? Think of the children. Think of all our futures. Vote no and put a ban in place. We don't need one in our city.
My name is Tom Schaufstall, resident of Mandan. My input is basically dealing with like cash bonding. I think there should be a cash bond. I think the bond should be held by Bank of North Dakota. I think if there's a bankruptcy, it should be forfeited. I think with the time frame for violations, I think it should be a 24-hour period. I think it should be regardless of weekends, weekdays, holidays. If there's a violation, it should be handled. I think the fine should be handled immediately, a non-refundable fine. I think there shouldn't be, if there's any court cost involved, I think the data center should be responsible. I don't think the city of Mandan should be sued if there's any problems. I think that we should get the state involved for compliance people, and with a violation, who's going to enforce that? Who's going to stand up? Is Is the city engineer going to be responsible for it? What happens if he's on vacation? Who's responsible? What happens if who's going to have the ability to shut down the data center if there's violations and they're not compliant? I think that's pretty much it. I think we should have more oversight. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Allison Schultz. I live on Beretta Street. That would be right southeast of this data center. We have been in a construction zone for the last probably at least 5 years now, if not more. I've been hearing construction from this high school being built. What's the sports complex? That Starion being built. Now, all these housing going up literally across the road from me. And now this data center is going to be just kind of northwest of that. I will be looking at it through my front yard. Finally, this year, we have geese in our yard again. We have deer. We have not for 5 years. I get really, emotional about this because I moved out there for a reason, to quiet, peace, dark, okay? If I wanted to live in the city, I'd be in the middle of the frickin' city. I didn't want that. I don't want the lights. I don't want the noise. I want quiet. When I moved out there, we were county. We were forced into being annexed into this city. And this, we didn't have a choice. It was all said and done before we even, if you want to call it voting, whatever the case may be. But my other concerns are environmental. With the, anybody ever heard of Legionella disease? AI uses hot water and cooling towers, which produces condensation, which at some point has a bacteria that can grow, and it's produced by spores in the air to inhale that. I am right southeast of that. Which way does the wind blow? Comes from the northwest, correct? All that stuff, the pollution, the fog, whatever, will be going right into my yard, into my home. I live on the north side. Races are on the south side. Sounds like the races are in my backyard at times. So I'm just concerned that for my peace and quiet and everybody else that lives in that area, come sit in my yard one time and tell me your thoughts.
Thank you. With that was our final speaker. And at this point, I will close the public comments and return it back to the commission. They asked a number of questions. Did you take notes on certain ones to readdress?
I sure did. Yeah. Okay. I guess starting at the top of the list, Joe had mentioned that 35 decibel level inside classrooms being kind of the level that you're targeting for no impacts to learning. That is something that we researched a little bit on. Most of the research was targeted at the sound change between indoors and outdoors related to open windows, windows that are propped open, and windows that are completely open. And they ranged from a 13 decibel reduction to about a 27 decibel reduction. So what we include in the ordinance would be outdoor requirements, and then in like a school situation, maybe you would want them to be able to have school with windows open. You'd work backwards from there. Maybe that would be 43 decibel at the very, or not 43, 48. 48, yeah, decibel requirement right outside the window. It's something that we could take into consideration. Maybe we could regulate decibel levels at the exterior of buildings rather than at property lines for schools specifically. That might be something that we could incorporate. Somebody had mentioned, and I think I do have it written down somewhere, but somebody had mentioned that we're afraid of putting in unrealistic regulations because we're afraid that data centers won't come to town in that situation. I think that more of our approach was unrealistic regulations could expose the rest of the ordinance to legal challenges, and I think that we wouldn't want the ordinance in its entirety thrown out due to overregulation. Another point that gets brought up a lot tonight is the moratorium. Conversations around a moratorium, a lot of people talk about we should have a moratorium until the state legislature gets through their legislative session from January to April. Right now, what we have is local control. We can control what happens in our municipality without a whole lot of interference from the federal or state government. I would be, or I guess from my position, I would be afraid that the results of the January to April legislative session is seeing communities around the state instating moratoriums and then saying we're not going to allow that and take some of our local authority away from us. So that's another kind of, thought process to toss out there. Right now, the federal government has streamlined permitting activities for data centers, and the state government has given sales tax incentives to data center developments inside the state. So with both of those political subdivisions encouraging data center development, I think that we are in a unique position to regulate to the extent that we want to, and we can do that without a whole lot of interference at upper levels of government. So that was one of the thought processes there.
I can jump into Chair. I know there was talk on just some of the MX and the MB zoning and the maps specifically. None of those maps, none of the changes have been made. We're still between first and second consideration with the City Commission. After the second consideration, those would go into effect. Now, that doesn't include any of the zone changes. And I know we spoke about this at the last P&Z meeting, but all of the zone changes that are going to happen, whether you're in an existing group, I know we talked about that downtown fringe district, a lot of those along that area turning into a different district, our regular R7. That plus all of these other areas need to be changed yet, and that has not come. That obviously is coming. So those maps have not been updated yet. So what is there is what is currently there until staff continues in this process. So.
Anything else?
Yes, I do have a document that I prepared for the meeting. I did say that we had, some changes that we had kind of identified ahead of the meeting, ahead of the public hearing, that were something that we thought should be ready for the commission to consider. Sheila, she didn't mention it today, but she had mentioned at a legislative session that we should be regulating PFAS in wastewater from these data centers. I think that would be a reasonable addition to this, would be to require PFAS-free coolants. Very realistic goal. 3M, I think, is a coolant manufacturer and has recently switched to all PFAS-free manufacturing. Can't can't remember who brought it up, the NDA ban. That is something that we've been hearing a lot about since we started working on it and attending those meetings. An NDA ban is something that I think we should consider including in the ordinance itself, as well as subsequent development agreements and possibly community benefit agreements down the line. This is language that might have to be included in several documents and not just the ordinance. Supplementary minimum setback we had talked about. We switched to a performance-based standard because there's a lot of people that are talking about, well, it should be half mile, it should be a mile. We're in a valley here, sound changes. We're in the snow environment, sound changes. We're on a river, sound changes. That's why we did switch to that performance-based requirement, but a supplementary minimum setback might be appropriate as a sort of safety net. And so we had I drafted language just to try and work that in, or have that, something for consideration tonight. And then strict school thresholds, we had talked about that as well. Schools should be treated in the most strict performance standards, and possibly different than I have it related here. Maybe we should be regulating at the exterior of the building, at window locations, rather than at a generic property boundary. So we can really hone in on that 35 decibel indoor classroom learning environment goal.
Follow-up question on that. I think you need to regulate on both the property boundary so you have a defined decibel level, because you can have other areas where there is no residence or anything to compare it to. So you have to have a fine line. But that goes back to what we talked about earlier. Commissioner McLean brought up, is the 55 too high? We've read, like Oracle was advertising at their property lines, they're at 45. So if Oracle can do 45, why shouldn't we?
Commissioner, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of this was based off of data that we were able to find through EPA documents. But if there's some better empirical evidence that we should be working off of, absolutely. We want to get the right number, and this was the best. The data that I had was anything below 55. You're diminishing returns, I think, regulating beyond that, but we don't know what the right number is.
There's a pretty big difference, so, I mean,
absolutely.
My new dishwasher is 40, and you can't hear it 8 feet away, so.
Yep.
Questions?
Sorry, I have a question. So, in the acoustic impact report, there's a line in here about project sites at 35 acres or less. If it's less than 35 acres, there's only one monitoring site. Do you think we could add in there that we monitor all sites on a 4-point north, south, east, west?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think there's just a lot of room there, size-wise. So I think that's something that I think needs to be included. We need to be doing these studies on all north, south, east, west.
Commissioner, I agree. I think that it's almost negligible on the scale that we're talking. 35 acres might not even be a site that we ever see.
35 acres that's a big jump.
And then I think that specifically for like the modeling effort that would be associated with an application, those modeling efforts, they're going to be it'll be like a contour map. So it will be, at more than just the 4 locations. And I did have a hard time maybe defining that, because really it could be infinite locations during that modeling phase. And then what we would be able to do is identify hotspots that the model comes up with and place those receiving locations at those hotspots for the subsequent acoustic verification after construction. But I agree. Keep it simple at 4, might as well.
Chair Robinson, I guess I could
got to ask kind of clarification on what we're actually going to do here. There's obviously many changes that the city's even talking about. It's on. There we go. Thank you. Obviously, there's so many different things that want to be changed. I've got a whole list. Ellen's got a list. Everybody's got a list of things that they would like to see change. How do we do this at this point? Do we do some kind of a subcommittee to work with the city staff and try to come up with something different? What do we, I guess I'm confused what we're actually going to vote on tonight. Because obviously I don't think anybody feels comfortable on voting with it just the way it is right now, because there are changes that need to be made. So is that in our ability to request a subcommittee to review this? I need clarification maybe from Amy here.
I guess if I understood Jarek correctly, there was at least a handful of things where he took some of the suggestions or changes that we talked about today that would or could be added into it. Is the list too long to actually put together something in form of a motion tonight? Probably. I guess, Jarek, you can confirm or argue against that.
My intention was to put together a list so that we could make a motion tonight. I would hate to kick the can down the road forever and be indecisive, but we don't want to be making, we want to be making the best decision we can also. But I was trying to equip the commission to be able to make a motion without saying that it has to be exactly as it's written right now. Yeah, that was my intention. But
okay.
Chair Robinson, can we do our best to outline what that list would look like and then ask for it to be brought back at the next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I mean, we can, but at some point we got to get something in the code. We do have to do that. I'm very leery of the moratorium for a couple different reasons. You look at the last session, a couple different House bills. House Bill 1427, they actually reviewed language to give the Public Service Commission to regulate siting compatibility, which pretty much word for word is exactly what you went to last week. That's what the state was looking at. The other reason is House Bill 1239. Language they used is an individual may not be prohibited, restricted, or otherwise prevented from participating in digital asset mining in an area zoned for residential. I mean, this is exactly the kind of language they were looking at that you spoke against tonight. And this is probably going to come up again in this coming session. I think they'll probably approve some low-hanging fruit, cooling systems, that type of thing. But I think there's going to be more language like this considered in this coming session. The governor spoke against moratorium. Representative or senator from here, Keith Boehm, said it's a bad idea. And they would know more than us. I think the state session is not going to do you any favors, us any favors.
Chair Robinson, if we move it forward and the state still does moratorium, does that mean they can override what we do here then? Today or next month or whatever?
I mean, for us, our two options today, approve as is, approve with modification, or probably table it as suggested.
Chair Robinson, if I might, so I think going into this, first thinking this public hearing was going to be in July, and then the city staff heard a lot of that public input, took more time, put something together with more teeth. But approaching this, I've been just praying for a lot of civility and respect and compassion and the strong sense of community that Mandan has always been known for. And so please, let's keep that decorum this evening and allow for a continued respectful discussion, if we could, please. I think there isn't anybody in this room that doesn't care about this community as a place to live and to work and to do business, or at least in some subsection thereof. The people sitting at this table have either been elected by the citizens or they volunteered to provide their service at no compensation. And I don't think there is anyone that has ever been asked to participate in a non-disclosure agreement. But if that would give comfort, certainly I would be in favor of something like that being added to the ordinance. I think it's very important that we separate process from project. And so this is really just about trying to get the rules right before any application or proposal for any location whatsoever of any size or shape ever comes before the city of Mandan for consideration. And I think we're trying to work in a very collaborative manner between the city and Morton County. The two political subdivisions have always had a strong relationship, and I think we want to continue that. I personally would not be in favor of a moratorium, and here's why. If you've seen one data center, you've seen one data center. And so, for example, in Bismarck, we've had Dakota Carrier Network that was established, I believe, in about 2016, that is a collaboration of 13 independent broadband organizations in North Dakota. And so for anyone in the extraterritorial jurisdiction that's getting your broadband or internet service from either West River Telephone or Beck Communications, it's because a facility like that exists, and that's a data center. So we can't paint them all with the same brush. And so for that reason, I think we do need to look at some rules that make sense, that protect the rights of landowners and residents and adjacent property owners and business owners, and try to get this right. And it might mean taking a little more time. So I think we need to balance those needs and concerns. So I'm in favor of looking at something with some of the refinements to address some of the big picture issues that we heard here this evening.
Jordan, let me ask this question, and maybe I should change it in a little bit different direction for you. If we send you all our questions and directions of where you go, we send this to the city commission, they will get our wishes and stuff like that so we can move this forward. I really don't want the state to control what we do in Mandan. That's my biggest worry. So I guess my question to Jordan is if we put a list together and give it to the city commissioner, and the mayor's here too, will that help or not help? Thank you.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter. Yeah, I think, Jarek and I have got part of a list started, but with something to that effect of the things that this board is asking for and to move that forward. Obviously, you're a recommendation to the city commission, and part of that, if that's a motion, we can definitely accommodate that piece of it. And like I said, I think Ellen said it good, but this is the ordinance. If we do have something come forward, we want to have something in place before that happens, and then we'll start this process all over again.
Thank you.
Jordan, just to expand upon that, because obviously there's a lot of rumor of we don't have an application in front of us today, obviously, to vote on. I'm nowhere in favor of that one. Obviously, we're location-based wise. But how many locations within Mandan could there actually be a data center today without a variance or a conditional use permit? Could there be another spot for it today?
Maybe a clarification. Under the existing ordinances, I don't know. I would imagine that there would not be very much restriction on where they could be at, just because I don't think it's well defined in what is an ordinance that we felt was outdated.
prefer to see.
So if we move this forward, my understanding is we could do that, and you could basically provide to the commission, the next commission hearing, the additional changes that we have discussed and are in favor of. And that would be published before the commission hearing.
Yeah, Chair, I'm saying, Commissioner, it would have to be. And we'd have to have the current version and then all of the suggested changes go out before any of those. And that would be part of our process with obviously noticing it and then the public hearing piece, which we have not done yet. So, yep.
Chair Robinson. Jordan, if we put it forward, though, you're going to give us a list of the things that we've discussed here to make as a motion to, or do you want us, how do you want to do that?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner, I apologize. I do have a list up on the screen that everybody except for you all can see. And I know that's not very helpful, but I could list the titles that I have here are PFAS-free coolants, NDA bans,
Chair Robinson, if I might, is there a way we could get that screen back on? I know at the beginning we were able to see it.
I think so. We've got DMA coming. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, yes, these first four would be the ones that I had prepared based on feedback, written feedback that we had received from the community. And then the one that's not formatted as nicely is the one that Commissioner Lang had just proposed. And that would basically be, regardless of proposed project size, we're going to have the 4 monitoring locations, northeast, south, and west. But I was trying to prepare something where you would have more latitude than yes or no, if that makes sense.
Chair, what about changing the 45 at nighttime? You can put that in there too as well.
I sure can.
Okay.
Is that interested? Okay. See how this turns out. All right. And maybe just for clarification, your suggestion was 45-40 or 50-45?
Everything I've seen is 50 and 45, but
54.
Most of the new ones are running at about 42 during nighttime and 48 during.
Reduce each one by 5.
Does that capture the, okay.
Any other questions? Comments?
Chair Robinson, here's where I'm struggling with this, because we all have a list of things we want to change. We could sit here till tomorrow morning and still not have everybody's in here. There's got to be some way that we can advance this with the stipulation that as commissioners, we can all present something to the city of what we would like to see changed in here, and they can present that to the city commission before their next hearing. Is that something that's doable? I don't know how, I mean, can we make that, can I do that in some kind of a motion that will advance this the way it is, with the understanding that the planning and zoning commissioners are going to forward their recommended changes to the city, that gets presented to the city commission before?
Right, so as he scrolled through this list, does it cover what each of us would have had?
Because we've all are going to have changes here, and some of them we might be all on the same page, and some of them we maybe aren't. Some of these things maybe we're going to want to see different things, be doing different commissioners, but at least we can get something to the city that they can look at and say, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, and it's still going to have to be reviewed by the city commission anyway.
Chair Robinson and Commissioner Renner, with all due respect, doesn't that just simply become that we're one more individual piece of public input at that point, if it doesn't come from discussion and developing some sort of consensus and passing some sort of motion of either either failure or recommendation here this evening?
I don't believe that, because we still have the ability to give input to the city, and the city is going to determine that before it goes to the city commission anyway. And I'm assuming we're going to see this again anyhow. Or do we have to? I know your time frame, I get it too. Obviously I don't want the state to have any control over this before us anyway. But if we can put something together tonight where we all agree as commissioners to get our recommendations to the city, can we, and I don't know which is the right way to do this, that's why I'm asking for help, can we table this until the next planning and zoning so that they've had a chance to review what we all said before it gets sent to the city? We're still a couple 3 months away from January and the state session anyway.
If I may, Commissioner Renner, it sounds like that we're kicking the can down the road. We got to act on this. We really got to act on this.
And I disagree with that. We want to get this right. We don't want to just push this
I
down
understand we got to get it right over here, but city commission and stuff. When is the next city commission meeting?
Commissioner Hammond, the next city commission meeting is September 1st. I think that we had envisioned, if there was a motion, a recommendation at this meeting, that we would bring it to the September 15th meeting, though. But September 1st is the next city commission meeting.
Let me ask the question, what is the best possibility for us right now, in your opinion?
Commissioner Hammond, we worked pretty hard on the ordinance as written. Obviously, every ordinance can be refined forever, and they are refined forever. This would be getting something in place, and if there were improvements made, if there was new information, we would still be able to make the changes that need to be made, but this would give us protection right now. That my recommendation would be to to approve or recommend approval to the city commission with specific changes, possibly the ones outlined here, but something that isn't so vague that it could be taken in many different directions. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Renner, I guess what do you, if you took notes and you want something else in there, why aren't you sharing it now? I guess I don't understand why you don't want to put it in there now.
Oh, absolutely I could. I've got my stuff. If we want to sit here and go through everything, we sure can.
Yes, please.
I don't have my notes as organized as yours. I guess one of the things I had been looking at was the Morton County's data center deals too. There's been a lot of talk about with the data centers about them generating their own power, so they're not on the power grid. Morton County does have where they're talking about what's going to be required if they have their own gas turbine generating power plants. We have nothing in that at all in ours. I think we should have something like that. I have a few different small things in here, but on page 7, environmental assessment, the biological study, why is the applicant get to execute and submit the comprehensive pre-construction inventory? What Morton County is doing is they're requiring U.S. Fish and Wildlife and North Dakota Game and Fish to be involved. I think that's something that we should be doing also. The archaeological survey, in ours, it's staying just before the construction. What about during construction? Morton County does address what happens if they do find any archaeological remnants, bones or whatever, how they have to address that. We don't have anything like that in ours. So, that's just the first couple of pages here.
Chair Robinson, may I? Okay, yeah. I guess some of these items we had are addressed through like FEMA processes. Fish and Wildlife is addressed through a FEMA process. Power generation plan, I believe, is something that we have included. I have a hard time locating it. Location and layout of power generation systems we have here. I do believe that on the utility verifications, utility providers want a state describing, yeah. A description of the power supply approach and cooling methods would have been, a lot of these things are, we're not going to have, if we need to have more detail in what they need to supply in a description of the power supply approach, you maybe could, but we were just trying to keep it simple as that might be, yeah. Not that we're trying to, we're not power supply experts, and to list all the things that might be included in power supply or power generation and stuff like that, we would like that communicated to us as part of this utility verification process.
Commissioner Robinson, Jarek, how many changes do we have already to this document?
Chair Robinson, Mayor Freilich, we have 6.
Okay, do we want to take action on the 6 and include them?
If we have them listed out, I think we could.
Okay. We'll make that motion.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 6 changes that are set forth on the screen by Jared, and that the proposed draft, if the motion passed, would therefore be amended, and then we would vote on the proposed draft as amended.
I just want to clarify, so you want to make a motion to approve these 6, amend the draft with these 6 in it?
We first have
Just
to,
that?
we first have to vote on these.
Yeah. I can second his motion.
Chair Robinson, just to clarify, the motion is to approve with, or to recommend approval with conditions, is that correct?
The motion is, if I understand Commissioner Smith correctly, is just to suggest the 6 changes as shown.
Yeah, is the commission in agreement on the 6 changes? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Got it, thank you.
Sorry, Jared, can you summarize these changes again for us, I think, if we're going to vote on if this is what we want?
The 6 changes, first one is PFAS free coolants, section 5, subset A1, language pertaining to the cooling system. Change number 2, NDBA bans, section 4A, prohibiting NDAs. Change number 3, supplementary minimum setback, section 5A. Minimum setback of 5 feet shall be maintained between all data center structures and equipment. Item number 4, strict school thresholds, section 3H9 and 5B1. If a person within half-mile radius contains lawfully established residential dwelling, and then references table 1. Next item is monitoring locations numbers. Section 3H2, minimum of 4 logging instruments shall be placed north, south, east, and west. Next change, reduced decibel threshold. Section 5BI, is that correct? Am I reading that correct? All measurements have been reduced by 5, correct?
Correct.
And that's both daytime and nighttime threshold?
Chair Robinson, that's correct. The left would be the daytime thresholds, and the right would be the nighttime thresholds. I would also like to note that we did we reduced the C-weighted requirements as well to keep that consistent 10 decibel gap between the 2 metrics.
Thank you. So the motion is to amend the draft with the 6 changes as shown and just described. Do you understand the motion? Questions? With none, roll call vote.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Huber?
Yes.
Veda Hammond?
Yes.
Commissioner Butter?
Yes.
Mayor Freilich?
Yes.
Commissioner Lang?
Yes.
Commissioner Renner?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner McLean?
Yes.
Commissioner Infeld?
Yes.
Chair Robinson?
Yes. And I failed to clarify, the motion was Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner McLean.
Commissioner Robinson, are there any other amendments we would like to add to this? Any language? Mr. Renner? Would you like to add any other amendments?
Are we ready for step 2?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the proposed section 101-11-12 data centers provisions as just now amended for the City Commission's further consideration.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Mutter. Motion is to approve Section 101-11-12 on data centers with the changes as we indicated and for City Commission consideration. Questions? None. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Mutter,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Lang,
Yes.
Commissioner Renner,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Infeld,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber.
Yes, sorry, we get a little bit of an echo up here.
Commissioner Veda Hammond,
Yes.
Chair Robinson.
Yes. Motion is passed. Nothing else on the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. Thank you.